The agenda this week heard from urbanist Richard Florida about rising inequality in cities. We explored how that trend is playing out in Ontario's capital city, examined the use of solitary confinement in the province, and revisited the question of changing the electoral system in Canada. The agenda's Week in Review begins debating when journalism becomes activism. Are you sure that people understand that if somebody writes a piece on the front page of the Toronto Star, or any newspaper for that matter, that is meant to be a straight news story, that there's a distinction between just the facts, ma'am, on the front page of the paper versus what they'll see as opinion on the op-ed page?
I'm not sure that they will see an exact distinction, but I think that it's the responsibility of the media to provide that impression to people, to readers or to viewers. I think that, you know, it's all I'm saying is that what's important is what the public perceives. It's not these red lines and who is a journalist and who is an activist and who is a columnist. That's, I don't think, is of interest to people.
I mentioned media literacy and I saw you go like this right away.
I want to talk about literacy too, because I agree that maybe the average reader thinks that everybody who writes for the Star is secretly funding some special fund for lefties. I don't know, right? But we have a responsibility as the media to explain what these distinctions are. We clearly haven't. But beyond that, this issue of bias, I don't agree with Francine here. I don't believe my job is to be unbiased. I believe my job is to be honest and accurate and fair.
But you don't present yourself as a straight up the middle objective journalist, so no one expects you to be unbiased.
Find me one who is, Steve. That person does not exist there. We're essentially creating this objective that is not human, and then pretending that we're trying to get as close to it as possible. What I think is actually better is to lay your biases out on the table. What I did report on carding in the so-called tradition of objective journalism for about 3 years. And when I decided I could not do that anymore, I announced it to the whole world at a police services board meeting. I told everybody, this is hurting me, it's hurting my community, and to stay in this neutral space that's controlling me as a journalist, I can't do it anymore. So everyone, from now on, when I write about these things, know that that's not the kind of work that I'm personally trying to do. If you're open about that, I don't see what the problem is. So again, like, if you have an activist on your show, if you have somebody who blocks pipeline roads or who stands up in really big, like, because we seem to have a problem with the civil disobedience stuff. That's what we seem to be defining as activism. Can't you tell your readers that that's what that person does? That's where they're coming from. Make up your own mind. Why do we have to pretend to the reader that that person is going to provide all opinions or provide no opinion and just be in some neutral space? I don't think those things are possible.
Because those have, well, this is why we're having you on the program. Those have been the rules of the road for the last however many decades, which is there's a person over in that corner who just goes out, finds the facts, and regurgitates them as nicely as possibly.
And that's a reporter.
For the news section,
that's a reporter.
And then there's guys like him who are supposed to put opinions on the op-ed page. And then apparently, you're telling us there's a new kind of beast out there, which is a person like you who's allowed to be an activist and a journalist and an op-ed person all at the same time.
I just don't know how so many of my other colleagues in this industry are not being activists. I think it's so bizarre to describe what people are doing. Because, yeah, so for example, I will say on policy X, here's what I think should be done. Here's even what I think people can do if they want to get to policy objective X. I don't know a good opinion writer in this country that doesn't do that.
Francine, I want to have you comment on what Desmond seems to be saying, which is that, you know, all of us who say we're up the middle on issues and we don't bring bias or opinion to our reporting, that we're just the facts, ma'am, it's a bunch of hypocrisy and it doesn't really exist. What's your view on that?
It's been the foundation of journalism for a very long time. The public has come to expect that of journalists as well. And we're dealing with a very informed public. Now they're able to search the facts that you're producing in your pieces. You know, so yes, there is a line between journalism and activism. I'm going to just stick to that because it's been the foundation of this industry for a long time.
I'm just going to come back real quick again and say I'm talking about making opinions here. I work with people like Wendy Gillis and Jim Rankin, or I did at the Star, who reported on karting without trying to insert their personal opinions into what they were reporting about karting. Now, just because I have personal opinions does not mean I'm not relying on the same facts that they reported on. I am. I'm adding some kind of slant and analysis to that. I'm surprised we need to have this conversation in Canadian media in 2017. I'm glad
we're having this conversation
today. I can't do the slant and analysis and opinion part objectively. That is on its face impossible. We can report as straight and as down the middle as we possibly can on what we believe the facts to be. But if you want opinions, if you want analysis, then ask for fairness there. Ask for accuracy, ask for honesty. Don't ask a columnist to be unbiased.
Francine, you said we're happy that you're happy we're having this conversation.
I think it's a really good debate to be having, you know, in light of, you know, not only what recently happened with Desmond, but, you know, we recently had Idle No More. And, you know, going forward, there's been fake news lately. So I think we just owe it to the public as journalists to maintain that objectivity, to be able to talk to the sides of the story that you need to talk to in order to inform the public where every side is coming from.
I think I underpredicted the urban revival. That's what I would say I was wrong about. I was so hopefully optimistic that cities like Pittsburgh or Detroit or Cleveland would come back. You know, think about Toronto 2 decades ago. It was a good city. But it wasn't this kind of massive urban revival with skyrocketing housing prices and a dividing. It was a different town. So I think I underpredicted the urban revival. And I think I was quite shocked at how fast it came on, how big it was, and many of the challenges and divisions it brought with us. And so that's where I began to retrospect and introspect and say, oh my God, this urban revival that I was kind of rosy-eyed about, that I was very optimistic about, yes, it brought many good things. It helped many cities came back. It brought talented people, and it brought back many declining neighborhoods. But it was creating a new set of problems that I had not anticipated, and I knew I needed to dig into and try to figure out.
So how influential was actually living in Toronto over the past decade to your new way of looking at things?
You know, it's really interesting. I never thought of it until writing this book. If my original desire to be an urbanist was shaped by my experience in Newark, New Jersey, and then going to graduate school in New York City and seeing urban decline turn to urban revival. The death and life of great American cities, to quote the great Jane Jacobs.
Yep.
If the rise of the creative class was really shaped by my experience in Pittsburgh, a spectacular industrial city that was creating technology and talent, but seeing it move away, this book is a product of Toronto. And, you know, I moved here, the naive, and you remember because we met very, very, very early on, and you were gracious enough to have me on your show back then. I was so excited to come to Jane Jacobs, Toronto, the city I studied, the bastion of progressive urbanism. New York run by the Swiss, you know all these cliches. The city that still Americans believe does it right. We have our own, we know our warts, but Americans kind of, especially American urbanists, put Toronto on a pedestal. And then, of course, I was talking to Mayor Miller, Councillor Ray. We were talking about how to make Toronto a more inclusive economy, a more inclusive, innovative system. And into the void comes Rob Ford. Well, it really was the Ford election that was my big wake-up call.
That speaks to the next quote I want to put forward here, because here you are in the book saying all three, Donald Trump, Rob Ford, and the Brexit referendum, reflect the deepening fault lines of class and location that define us and divide us today. They are the product of our new age of winner-take-all urbanism, in which the talented and the advantaged cluster and colonize a small select group of superstar cities, leaving everybody and everywhere else behind. Much more than a crisis of cities, the new urban crisis is the central crisis of our time. Let's elaborate on that. Trump, Ford, Brexit. The product of this urban crisis? How so?
I remember when Rob Ford got elected, I wrote, not only was he, to my mind, an anti-urban mayor, but if he could get elected in Toronto, more and worse would follow. And by the way, Ford was a very benign kind of populism. He had his own personal problems, but he wasn't a bad, evil person. And he had a multi-ethnic, multicultural coalition, Asian, immigrant, new Canadian, Caribbean, and white working class. Yep. I think what followed, you know, and then I said, well, Brexit, okay, I understand that. America will never elect Trump. And when Trump was elected, I literally rewrote this book from top to bottom. But I think they really reflect one dimension of the new urban crisis, which is this increasing geographic divide. You know, lots of people, lots of very smart people have talked about economic inequality and income inequality. This book is about geographic inequality or spatial inequality. You know, it's bad in Canada. You know, Toronto is much more economically advantaged than Hamilton or Windsor. But in the United States, the level of geographic inequality from these, what I call the superstar cities, you know, like New York City, or the knowledge hubs like San Francisco or DC, compare them not just to Detroit and Cleveland and my own Pittsburgh, but then compare them to Dayton and Akron and these faltering towns all throughout the country. I have a chart that exemplifies winner-take-all urbanism in the book. How many houses can you buy for the price of one apartment in Soho? I don't know exactly what it is, but it's something like 38 houses in Memphis, 50 houses in parts of Detroit, 100 houses in parts of Youngstown. So this divide between, and so what happened, the same thing which happened with Ford here. There was this reaction against the so-called urban elites, the so-called urban cosmopolitans. People were falling further and further behind, and this backlash of populism filled the void.
Your book is actually replete with charts, and we want to share some of them with our viewers right now, because here's a couple of them. You talk about the superstar cities, and I want to advance a different kind of point here rather than the one you just made. This is the share of Canada's economic output by city. So you see Toronto, number one there, of course, big economic engine, almost 20%. Montreal, almost 10. Vancouver, almost 7. Calgary, a little over 6. Edmonton, a little over 5. But you add up those top 5 cities, that's almost half the economic output of the entire country in those 5 cities. Let's compare that to the United States. You've got New York City, the number one city, but well below 10%. LA, just over 5. Chicago, just over 3.5. Houston, not quite 3. Washington, D.C., not quite 3. So the top 5 only represent a quarter of the economic output of the United States. So my question is, why is the concentration of all of that economic output in our 5 main cities and representing so much more a part of our economy, why is that concerning to you?
Well, I think Canada is actually more near the norm, and the U.S. is an outlier. You know, U.S. came out of World War II a hegemonic power. It really dominated the world. It could have this massive suburbanization. I remember when I met Jane Jacobs, you know, we were sitting in her house in the annex, and she said something. She said, you know, Canada has, in Jane's way, you know, 3, maybe 5 significant cities. She wasn't trying to be mean to Canada, but she was sort of saying, the U.S., Richard, there are all these second and third tier cities, and it's just a bigger place. And there's Austin, and there's Nashville, and there's all of these different kinds of places. And Canada is more normal. And I actually have a chart somewhere at the Martin Prosperity Institute or at the blog at where I write at City Lab, which compared countries by share of economic output in their major metros. The U.S. is very low. Canada is in the middle, about normal. In Korea, South Korea, Seoul, one metro produces more than 50% of all economic output. And really the book is about this Janus phase, 2-headed force called the clustering force. You know, just following Jane Jacobs' lead, it's not just great companies or great research and development units or great laboratories or great startup companies or tech companies that drive economic growth. It's not just the accumulation of talent and highly educated people. It's the clustering of all of that in great cities. Yeah. Talent and people and diversity and information and knowledge and universities and companies. And so that drives economic growth. So it makes sense that people cluster in Toronto and Vancouver or San Francisco. The downside of that, of course, is that very same clustering force, the flip side, the dark side, is that it carves the divides both between metropolitan areas and within them that really stand at the heart of the new urban crisis.
I want to start by pointing out what Richard Florida, the famed urbanist, has to say about this in his book, New Urban Crisis: Sky-high housing policies, rising inequality, deepening segregation, a shrinking middle class, and he has referred this, David, to the central crisis of our time. What do you think of his diagnosis?
I agree with that. There are, I think, 2 key issues that will do us in if we don't do something about it: climate change and inequality. And neither are problems of the city. They are problems in the city created by the way we govern ourselves and by the way we run our societies.
Michelle, he was, Florida, extremely optimistic when he first came to Canada a decade ago, much less so now. How about you?
I'm still optimistic, Steve. You know, he's absolutely right. We have some serious issues to deal with in the city and I think as a society. But I actually see 2 huge opportunities. One is that we're going to see a lot of people moving to our mid-sized cities over the next 20 years. Our region's looking to grow about 100,000 people per year for the next 30 years, and a lot of those people are going to be settling outside of Toronto.
So mid-sized city is what?
A Peterborough, a London, a Hamilton, Sudbury. And the other piece is that our governments are making huge investments in infrastructure, social, economic, and transit. So it's really an opportunity to leverage those dollars, every dollar, to get as many benefits as we can and address the issues that we're facing.
Kofi, you as pessimistic as Richard Florida at the moment?
I wouldn't say pessimistic, but I do believe without direct action, we're on a course for increased kind of breakdown in social solidarity. And I think for me, as a political scientist, we can talk about the economic trends and the social trends, but it's how it's playing out at the level of culture and the division within all Western societies between insiders, outsiders, and now that reflected in the rise of populism, I think has to have us all worried, because to respond to these issues which have taken decades to build, it's going to take decades to fix them. And with the way the political landscape is going, we may not have all that much time.
Let me pick up on that word trends. And to do that, I'm going to urge you all to look at the monitors here in the studio, because we're going to go through the Hulchansky maps now. Sheldon, you ready? Let's bring this up. David, I'd like you, if you would, to take us through the next series of maps, which start, as this graphic indicates, in 1970. We see with the blue areas where very high income people live.
This was a classic post-war inner city problems. People with choice, and that's the growing middle class, did not want to live in the inner city. So you see there, south of Danforth and Bloor, and a little bit north of Bloor, is the traditional inner city of poor neighborhoods.
But let's make the obvious point here. There's a little blue, there's a little red, and there's a lot of middle class yellow.
Right, yellow is the middle income group.
Okay, let's keep moving around. We're going to go a decade later.
1980.
What's happened?
A little more red and a little more blue.
Okay, let's go on to 1990.
And more of the same, but let me now warn you, when you jump to another 10 years, the year 2000.
Go ahead, Sheldon. Let's see, 10 years later, 2000. Wow, big change.
This brings us to today. It is a bit worse today in 2012. Our latest data, 2012.
And let's flip it over for the year 2012 as well.
And what this is showing is the reddish-brown color is low-income or very low-income neighborhoods, and vice versa. You see very little light blue. The high-income are very high-income neighborhoods, and there is a very small middle there.
Very small middle class and a lot more.
That is the trend.
Kim Campbell, the former Prime Minister, has floated the idea of having 2 MPs per riding, 1 man, 1 woman, and that way you'd get gender parity instantly. What do you think of that idea?
I think it's a great idea. I think there's really no reason not to suppose that political talent is at least equally distributed across the sexes. And so I think that's a great way of overcoming the sort of systemic barriers to women's representation. And of course, they do have a parity requirement in France. I think there are some persuasive arguments for it.
Elizabeth, a quick comment from you on that?
I mean, in principle, I support that sort of thing, although I also know that electoral backlash against reserved seats is often quite strong. So, I think there would probably be less difficult ways. Candidate quotas, because the research has shown, so I'm a scholar principally of elections and political behavior, and the research has shown that once women are on the ballot, they win. Basically, their win rate is the same as men. So getting women on the ballot is really the key thing. Melissa mentioned the issue of France too. France is a sort of interesting example where they have the parity laws. It's written into the Constitution, and the parties regularly, routinely ignore it. France is one of the worst countries in the world on women's representation at the national level. So I think the point in me bringing that up is that all these mechanisms we have, whether it's reserved seats or constitutional parity laws or changes in the electoral system, none of this guarantees greater equity and representation for women, racialized people, or Indigenous. It all comes down, in many cases, to questions of political will.
Well, to that end, let me quote from Ken Carty, who also wrote a couple of the essays in the book that you have out now, Should We Change How We Vote? Here's what Ken says. The simple truth is that across 3 provinces, in 3 referendums, the voters turned down the proportional alternative. Only in British Columbia, and then only the first time, did the yes vote ever exceed 50%. With none of the established party leaders championing reform, voters apparently were not convinced of the need to abandon first past the post for something new. Melissa, pick up on that if you would. First past the post gets a lot of criticism, some of the criticisms you've put on the record here in our conversation. But the fact is, anytime we've done anything formal to look at something different, the voters have said, actually, we're okay with the way it is. Why do you think?
Well, I like to put a bit of a more positive spin on what Ken Carty wrote, which is that there have been all of these experiments in electoral reform across Canada in recent years. And I think that's really good news in itself. I think that we don't have these kinds of debates unless democracy is already in a pretty healthy state. It's understandable that voters are wary of electoral systems that they're not familiar with. First past the post is all they've known. And so it's when the alternatives are relatively unknown and they're quite complex sometimes to understand, I can understand why voters might be a little bit wary. That said, though, it does bear repeating that in the first referendum on the BC proposal for switching to a form of proportional representation, it got 58% of the vote. And it only didn't win because they had set a 60-60 threshold for the passage of that. I was looking at an Environics poll from last year, which asked people what's wrong with the political system. And when it came to electoral reform, 41% of the respondents said that first past the post needs to be changed. Now that's a familiar figure because that's precisely the plurality by which the Liberal majority government got its majority of seats in Parliament. So I think that we shouldn't underestimate that there is some popular appetite for this out there, and also that just having the conversation has been quite healthy.
Sure. Melissa, one of let's go to Elizabeth on this. One of the criticisms that I have heard is that, and it was certainly the case in 2007 in Ontario, the government sort of put it out there. We're going to have a referendum. We're going to consider a different system. It may be really complicated, and we're really not going to spend a heck of a lot of time or money explaining to people what's on offer. In other words, we've made our commitment to offer a different democratic alternative, but that's it. Is that a fair criticism in your view?
Yeah, I mean, the Ontario example is a good one on that criticism because the government, in many corners, the government was criticized for a lack of attention to public education around the referendum and the issues at stake. Right. And not only that, but also the deliberative democratic process that had occurred prior. So the Citizens' Assembly that had occurred prior to assess the various alternatives and to deliberate and, with members drawn from every riding in the province. So, but I mean, just like the BC referenda and the Ontario referendum, maybe this speaks to the folly of holding these important referendum questions during general elections, because that's what happened in all of these cases. Mm-hmm. The referendum was just one relatively ignored aspect compared to the provincial election campaign, and it sort of got lost in the shuffle, perhaps.
One of the reasons this captured so much attention in Ontario is Adam Capet's case in Thunder Bay, where we were told he spent, 4 years in segregation? His is not the only quite desperate story we heard, and I was hoping to prevail upon you to tell us about a woman named Julia Bellotta. Is that her name?
Julie Bellotta, yes. Okay,
what happened to her?
Well, it was horrible circumstances, and certainly this was, it triggered a review in 2012. The then minister of the day, Minister Mayor, promised a full review, and that was a Bob Cook healthcare review that entailed. She was admitted at 9 months pregnant. Somehow that was undetected.
It was undetected? She was 9 months pregnant?
She was going through labor. She was in pain and screaming and
in solitary?
Well, no, she was moved to solitary because she was a disturbance, and she was being allowed, and so essentially, and this is all public record, Unfortunately, there wasn't any thought toward the fact that she could be giving birth. She was moved to segregation to get put out of the way of others so that they couldn't hear her screaming. To the point, and there's some graphic stuff here, and I'm not entirely sure, but I guess I will share it. There was blood involved in a foot of her baby, and the first thought was that was contraband. And it was a really unfortunate happenstance. It was egregious, and one of the very few cases that really points to, it's one of the really, and again, this triggered a report, and it triggered a lot of different things that, dating back to 2012, that's when this occurred. There was also Christina John and the John remedies, and there's just been so many of these things over the course of the last 5 or 6 years.
We need to complete that story. The baby died.
Yes.
Her baby died.
Gianni did die.
Okay, let's go back to Lisa, and I think we need to, in our remaining moments here, we need to get some better understanding of if solitary is too problematic for some of the reasons that you've explained, we need some better alternatives. So Lisa, have you got any better ideas you can share with us right now?
Well, I'm just, that's such a devastating, appalling story that, that Lee just told us about. And I think it's a good example of how there needs to be clear rules in legislation. This report in Ontario, it talks about how the policies that govern segregation aren't sometimes even publicly available, right? They're not even posted on the website. They're not even available to the public or to inmates who are segregated. There's no prohibition in our legislation on the placement of a pregnant woman in a segregation cell. Obviously, a wildly inappropriate place for prenatal care. The risk of her going into labor, obviously a wildly inappropriate place for someone who has recently given birth. And so these basic protections, which I really don't think any reasonable person disagrees with, those aren't in our law right now. And when they are in the law, when there's time limits and prohibitions and all these appropriate things, it will require corrections to ask for resources and to reorganize and to train staff differently. It will be a bit of a burden on them. But in my view, it's an appropriate burden, and it may actually be that correctional officers have an improved workplace if these limits are implemented in law and if the institution has to change as a result.
Lee, I see you trying to get in.
Yeah, my thought there, and I agree with everything Lisa just said, certainly, and I was a little moved when I was sharing that. It was difficult for me to put out, but one of the things that I can point to is the oversight in Ontario has been remiss for a long time. Andre Morin's tenure from 2005, when he came in as the Ontario Ombudsman, shut down what was called the corrections team. There has been no on-site presence from oversight body. Howard Saper's report, I'm impressed. It's the first time we can point to data. It's the first time you've been able to, or anybody's been able to look at statistics and break down pie charts and say, here's where things are and here's where the issues are, systemic issues. The Ombudsman Act gives tremendous power to the Ontario Ombudsman Office, and I believe they've played a big role in why this has continued to be problematic.
Morin is not here to defend himself, so do you have any explanation as to why he did that?
Well, they put together a SORT team, which was based upon, a major investigative unit to investigate big issues. But essentially it's become, and they also closed all their satellite offices and operate as a call center out of downtown Toronto, the only office. The Ontario Provincial Corrections has no complaint process internally for inmates, unlike the federal system.
Let's show what it looks like.
Sure.
Go ahead, Sheldon. This is image one. Okay, that's your classic, as we would say in the old imperial measurement, 6 by 9, I guess 2 meters by 3 meters now that we're in metric. Do you want to just give us a guided tour of
Well, sure. So that's a pretty typical modern segregation cell. And in my experience in going through Ontario corrections, it's rather remarkable because it actually had a window to the outside. You could actually get some natural light. That's not present in many or even most of the cells that I've seen. This is a segregation cell in Thunder Bay Correctional Center. So
doesn't look like they've got a window.
No window, no fresh air. Very little access to open space. So in front of that is a small corridor. So even when you're out of your cell, you may just be in a slightly bigger cage outside of your cell.
And typically you're in that room how many hours a day?
Well, the policy right now would call for you being confined to that space for 22 hours a day.
But during our investigation, what we found is that people weren't always given that time out of cell. And we spoke to many individuals who had been in their segregation cells for days on end without
ever getting out.
Without leaving them. Yeah.
What are the emotional / intellectual / health implications of doing that?
Well, you know, there's research on that question, and the research provides some mixed answers. But the general consensus is that it is soul destroying. People begin to hallucinate.
At what point?
It varies, and that's why the research is a little inconclusive, because it changes. It changes based on your own strengths, your own personal history. Did you have pre-existing mental health conditions before you were segregated? How many times you've been segregated? Do you know when you're going to be released? One of the most debilitating things about segregation is that it can be continuous. If you're segregated for a disciplinary infraction, and you're told as a punishment, you're going to be in segregation for 5 days, that is not as harmful to you as if you were put in administratively. And you know that that can go on forever, and you never know when you're going to be released.
So that light at the end of the tunnel means everything.
Absolutely.
You did put a deadline on this, though. You did say nobody should be in segregation for more than 15 straight days, and that ought to be a hard cap.
Yeah.
How'd you come up with that number?
Well, there's some international consensus around that number now. There was a UN special report on solitary confinement, and the special rapporteur recommended that 15 days, anything more than 15 days consecutive, should be considered cruel and unusual punishment. There's other rules that are existing around the world. There's the United Nations standard minimum rules called the Mandela rules that talk about caps. There's the European Union has rules around caps. Many of the US state jurisdictions are looking at 15 days now as a standard. So we didn't just pick it out of the air. There seems to be some consensus around that. And it does speak to the necessity for the system to really focus its efforts on doing what the law already tells them they should be doing, which is relying on segregation as an exceptional measure, not a default measure for difficult behavior.
I appreciate that you're only 6 months into a potential 3-year term doing this mission for the Ontario government. So I don't know how many people you've talked to so far, but I'm going to assume you talked to prison guards for this report, prison administrators, people in solitary?
Yeah.
You talk to them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Enough to get a good sense about how this has an impact on them?
Well, certainly, and I bring into this role a little bit of awareness about that. I've been spending a lot of time in jail most of my adult life, and I've spoken to many.
That's funny. We should just clarify for professional reasons, as opposed to breaking the law.
And you certainly have focused on segregation while I was correctional investigator for Canada as well. But you know what's interesting? No matter whether I'm talking to a deputy minister or a on-call correctional officer or somebody that's been in and out of the system as a correctional client for years, nobody is defending the status quo. Everybody's saying, yes, this must change, things can be better, we know how to do it better. Many of the things in my report, frankly, weren't news to the government of Ontario and to the people that manage the correction system. Many people have been calling for many reforms for years.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review for this Friday, May 19th, 2017. You can see all of those conversations in their entirety at tvo.org, on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, and now thanks to our nightly Twitter live stream on our Periscope page at periscope.tv/theagenda.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit tvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.